UFC 306 is this week. I'm going to give you a full card prediction and breakdown of all 10 fights on this card for Dvalishvili versus O'Malley on the Noche UFC Spear card. So this one should be pretty interesting. I think Dana has said that it's going to look pretty similar to what it's going to be like in person. So we'll see what all the $20+ million went to for this event. And I do think there are going to be some good fights on this. So hopefully, at least Dana seems like he's relying on some of these fighters to pull through on this one, just like UFC 300. But let's get into the first fight. We have Raul Rosas Jr. versus Aoriqileng. I am going to go with Raul Rosas Jr. Aoriqileng does struggle a little bit with good grapplers, like against Cody Durden. I know it was at flyweight. He's able to put a pretty big pace on Aoriqileng, and Aoriqileng does have some nice hands, but he did kind of quit a little bit against Daniel Marcos there, and Daniel Marcos was really piecing him up pretty badly. So, and Daniel Marcos I think is pretty good, and I think that fight actually showed how good Daniel Marcos was, or at least is. He's not gone now, but at least how good he is. Raul Rosas Jr., very good grappler, is continuously improving. I don't know if he's going to be better on the feet than Aoriqileng, and maybe his wild style might get him caught a couple times, but I do think he can eventually get Aoriqileng down to the ground and submit him. So I'm going to go with Raul Rosas Jr. late first round submission, if not probably early second round, with the first round kind of just being a little bit more of a scrap. So I'm going to go Raul Rosas Jr. in this fight by submission. Up the card, we have Edgar Cháirez versus Joshua Van. I am going to have to go with Joshua Van here. I know he did lose by KO to Charles Johnson, which is a little iffy to see, but he's only like 23 years of age. Edgar Cháirez has looked pretty solid in the UFC. He had the finish over Daniel Lacerda, finished Daniel Lacerda again. They called it a premature stoppage. I guess Lacerda kind of got away with that one, but the rematch, he was able to get the submission, a nice submission off his back, and he is pretty good off his back, at least in the grappling. Like we saw that against Tatsuro Taira, and that was the toughest fight of Taira's career, and then Taira had to take some time off and improve his stand-up, which I did really like to see. But he was catching Taira. Was pretty good off his back as well. There was like a couple moments where at the end of the round, like a guy like Cháirez could have gotten finished, but it was the end of the round, so he did have some good momentum swings in that fight. But I do think Edgar Cháirez is going to lose to Joshua Van here. A lot of the times when it is in those grappling situations, he is taken down, and Joshua Van is pretty good on the feet. It does take a little bit of some time to get into the fight, so maybe Edgar Cháirez can seal this first round and land some pretty big shots, and he does throw pretty heavy. But Joshua Van, man, when he starts going, throws in some combos, he kind of gets in that flow a little bit, and I do think he's going to piece up Cháirez pretty badly as this fight goes on. So I'm going to go with Joshua Van in this fight. I think he wins by decision. I'm going to say 29-28. I think Edgar Cháirez definitely steals the first round. Maybe not. Maybe Joshua Van kind of puts it on towards the end of the first, but I can see Cháirez winning that first round, but I do think Joshua Van will piece him up as this fight goes on. So let's move on. We have Yazmin Jauregui versus Ketlen Souza. Souza looks all right, but Jauregui, at one point, I thought she was one of the better prospects in the UFC, and she's only like 25 and a half years of age, so she still has a lot of time. I'm just really worried about her chin. But the thing with Ketlen Souza is she's kind of low output, and I'm not kind of worried. I don't think she's going to pull off like a Denise Gomes, where Denise Gomes is kind of like one of those really powerful Brazilian fighters that you find in pretty much every UFC division, like your Joaquim Silva or like your Alessandra Costa at flyweight. There's always that one kind of Brazilian fighter that has heavy hands and kind of makes their ways through fights and hangs in there in the UFC is kind of a little like that little gatekeeper area. But we found out Jauregui doesn't have a great chin. I don't think Ketlen Souza can catch Jauregui here and get the finish. I think Jauregui is just going to be too fast. It's going to have way too much output for Ketlen Souza, and I think she's going to piece her up on the feet. So I'm going to go decision for Yazmin Jauregui here. Let's move on, especially with some of these fights to decision. It is in the Spear. It's Noche UFC. We might get a little bit more biased judging. It's not in Mexico, but still a pretty big event for Mexicans, Mexican Independence Day. So you'll see them kind of bring it a little bit more, I think, in these fights. So let's move on. We have Manuel Torres versus Ignacio Bahamondes. And now I'll kind of get into the main card a little bit earlier on how I think they should have rearranged these fights, but this is one of my favorite fights on the card because I do like Manuel Torres quite a bit. I think they should actually be promoting him more than that Rodríguez guy on the main card. What's his name? It's Ronaldo Rodríguez. Manuel Torres, I think, should be promoted, or either one of these guys, because whoever wins this, I think, should be promoted a little bit. Ignacio Bahamondes has been a pretty I would say, touted prospect in the UFC for a while now. Like, he got in there pretty young, got that really nice wheel kick against Roosevelt Roberts, but since then he's kind of hung in there. Ludwig Klein's pretty solid as well, but he probably should have finished someone like Trey Ogden. That fight was, I don't know. I thought he was going to do a lot better against Trey Ogden, and he didn't. He got the finish against Christos Giagos, which looked pretty nice, but Manuel Torres is one of these guys that are able to just find the finish, and he's really clean on the feet. There was a point in the Chris Duncan fight where he did seem to get caught a little bit early. He backed up, and then he threw a head kick as Chris Duncan was shooting for a takedown and rocked him there. So he's able to get a nice submission off his back. And I do think he can win against Ignacio Bahamondes. I don't see Manuel Torres finishing Bahamondes, which is kind of my worry here, because Bahamondes does have really good takedown defense. I don't think Manuel Torres can take him down. I don't know. It's going to be really tough to see, because we haven't seen Manuel Torres go those 3 rounds in the UFC from what I remember here. Yeah, most of his fights are all by finish. Let's see. He had 1 split decision, majority decision in his career. All of them are either win by submission or by KO. He's lost by submission, so maybe Ignacio Bahamondes can somehow get him down to the ground and submit him, but I just don't see that happening. You can catch Manuel Torres, but again, I think Ignacio Bahamondes, his output's not as high as Manuel Torres, and Manuel Torres just kind of has that it factor where he can find the finish. And I do think he can potentially rock Ignacio Bahamondes. Maybe Bahamondes rocks all over the place and maybe goes down to the ground and Manuel Torres hops on his back and gets a submission that way. I can definitely see something like that happening. I don't know. I'm a little skeptical of this fight. I think this is a pretty big test for Manuel Torres to see if he can get past a relatively durable prospect in Ignacio Bahamondes, who doesn't really get finished. So I'm going to go with Manuel Torres here. I think he can find the finish. I'm just not sure how. Maybe he can get like a standing TKO against Ignacio Bahamondes or something like that. But I don't know. It'll definitely be pretty interesting to see. Let's move on. I'm going to go with Manuel Torres, though. I believe in him more as a prospect. They're kind of like this, and Manuel Torres, I think, is going up a little bit more, well, at least at a faster pace than Ignacio Bahamondes, especially on his rise. So I think Manuel Torres just has a lot more finishing potential, but we'll see how his cardio holds up in a 3-round fight here if it does go to a decision. So let's move on. We have Irene Aldana versus Norma Dumont. I am going to go with Irene Aldana. I think her hands are a lot better than Norma Dumont, and I do think she does have the ability to unleash some combos. I know she's, 36 years of age, but these guys are both, these women are both former featherweights, so they are kind of going down this division. And Irene Aldana, I know she just came off a scrap against Carol Rosa, but her boxing's pretty good. This is why I picked her against, I probably shouldn't even talk about it, but I picked her to win against Amanda Nunes, and she just looked really bad. She didn't even throw a punch, and then she came out and looked pretty good against Carol Rosa. She has a lot more power. Her combinations look pretty good. I don't think Norma Dumont's going to get this fight to the ground. And even then, Irene Aldana does have some tricky submission ability. She does train with Diego Lopes, I believe. I don't know if Diego Lopes is going to be coaching this fight or not. I think he might come and coach the main event after his fight, but she has some crafty submission skills on the ground. I wouldn't say it's too great, but she has the ability to get a submission up off her back. But I do think that this fight does kind of go in Norma Dumont's favor. It kind of slows it down, puts her up against the fence, and closes off the distance a little bit more. I think Irene Aldana just has too many good combinations and has too much power in this fight for Norma Dumont. So I'm going to go Irene Aldana. I don't think she KOs Norma Dumont. I think this one probably goes to a decision. I'm going to probably say 29-28. Irene Aldana. I think she just has way too much power. Fight scored off of damage, and she's Mexican. So let's move on. We have Ronaldo Rodríguez to open up the main card against Ode Osbourne. Really questionable. I really think that this fight would look a lot better in my mind if Manuel Torres versus Ignacio Bahamondes was to open up this card, but I guess if Ronaldo Rodríguez gets a finish, it's going to look a lot better for Dana White. Like, I told you. Like, this guy's going to get a finish. I honestly don't think he's that good of a prospect, Ronaldo Rodríguez. Dennis Bondar had a few moments in that fight where he landed pretty cleanly on him that I didn't think was pretty good at all. The one thing that does go in Ronaldo Rodríguez's favor, I do think he's a little bit better than Ode Osbourne on the feet, and Ode Osbourne I don't think is going to take down Ronaldo Rodríguez, so he doesn't have to worry about being on his back in this fight, and I do think he wins this one. I think he tears up the legs of Ode Osbourne in this. It's just going to make the striking a little bit easier. He does have the ability to submit guys. Like, he is really crafty grappling. It's just his wrestling's not that great. I'm going to go Ronaldo Rodríguez. I think he beats up Ode Osbourne's leg, with Ode Osbourne kind of just finding ways to get up back to his feet, like dropping him multiple times. I think he can hop on his back and potentially get a submission there. So I'm going to go second round submission for Ronaldo Rodríguez. I think he's just a little bit more craftier on the ground than Osbourne. And Osbourne, he kind of has a striking, but we've seen him get beaten, especially pretty recently. Rafael Filho by submission, Suamabaya by submission. Like he's getting submitted left and right. Ronaldo Rodríguez does have the ability to submit guys. Let's move on. We have Daniel Zellhuber versus Esteban Ribovics. A really good fight. Ribovics is a pretty scrappy dude and has that really nice KO against Terrence McKinney, where he kind of just sat him down against the fence. I am going to go with Daniel Zellhuber, though. Esteban Ribovics is a fun guy to root for because he is really scrappy, and he does have the ability to KO guys and make a highlight reel KO against someone like Terrence McKinney, who does have a little bit, still has a little bit of backing. I think probably not anymore because he's gotten KO'd way too many times at this point. But Daniel Zellhuber, a pretty big dude, 6'1". I know Esteban Ribovics is 5'10", but Zellhuber just feels longer. I think he's going to be able to use his kicks, stay out of range, or stay at range, and be able to avoid some of the bigger strikes of Ribovics. Ribovics can kind of maybe find his way inside in this fight, and Ribovics is a little bit more of a scrappier dude, so this could be potentially fight of the night, in my opinion. We'll see how this one goes, but I am going to go with Zellhuber by decision. I don't think he's going to KO Ribovics. I think we'll see him trying to chop up the legs, maybe go to the body a little bit more here, and just keep that nice distance and win this one by decision. Ribovics will be trying to find his way inside, though, and I think he does have a little bit of a decent chance in this one, plus 190 underdog. It's probably about right here, but I think Daniel Zellhuber, we're 25-year-old dude, Mexican Independence Day, I think he can find his way in this fight and win this one by decision. So let's move on. We have Brian Ortega versus Diego Lopes. I'm going to go with Diego Lopes. I picked Diego Lopes in the first fight as well. He kind of screwed over Diego Lopes a little bit more here, but Diego Lopes still found the win over Dan Ige. People crapped way too much on Diego Lopes in that last fight because Dan Ige came in at, 160 pounds is what I want to say. Let me check. 165-pound catch weight, which is insane. Because if you don't know, Diego Lopes made 145 pounds the night before against Brian Ortega. Brian Ortega moved it to a catch weight the morning before, made the catch weight at 155. Fight was supposed to be scheduled. He pulled out. Dan Ige came in on a couple hours notice of the fight and made 165-pound catch weight. So now Diego Lopes had to cut to 145. His opponent's going to have a 20-pound weight advantage without cutting weight. So, and it's a different like style matchup. Dan Ige is a guy that has a lot of power. His wrestling's okay, but again, he's like a smaller, stockier dude. So it's going to be hard to find a takedown, especially if you're Diego Lopes, who's more of a grappler type. Like he's not gonna. He does have some pretty solid wrestling, but it's not. He's not the size of Dan Ige. It's going to be tough to get takedowns on him. Completely different style matchup. I'm sure Diego Lopes was working on a stand-up because I didn't see him getting taken down by Brian Ortega. Brian Ortega's wrestling is not good either. And I do think that's going to be a factor in this fight as well. I don't see Brian Ortega submitting Diego Lopes unless he gets him down. I don't see Brian Ortega rocking Diego Lopes in this fight to where he goes to the ground and then he gets submitted. I think Diego Lopes is way too crafty on the feet for Brian Ortega. And Brian Ortega has been talking about moving up to 155. And even in their last fight, like I even mentioned, like Brian Ortega doesn't seem like his head's in the game that much. Like he's 33 years of age, 33 and a half years of age. Been talking about going up to 155. Personal life, he's got his family back together. So he's probably like, he's peaceful in his brain. Like he probably doesn't have that dog in him in this fight. And Diego Lopes, much younger, running up this division, has a lot of momentum behind him. I think he beats Brian Ortega in this fight, and it was a little bit worrying to see him tire out a little bit against Dan Ige, but again, completely different style matchup. Brian Ortega, I don't think he's that good on the feet. He has a good chin, so he's going to be able to take a lot of shots. It's more of Diego Lopes kind of pacing himself in this fight. Is basically what this is. I think Diego Lopes is a lot better on the feet. Like you saw him KO Sadiq Youssef, which I thought was pretty impressive win. I didn't think he was going to win like that, but again, pretty impressive win. Dan Ige, again, pretty bad style matchup, 20 pounds heavier, no weight cut either. I think I don't want to say he runs through Brian Ortega, but I think he beats up Brian Ortega pretty badly and has a pretty good performance here. I think Brian Ortega, just as a style matchup here, is in a really bad matchup with Diego Lopes. Diego Lopes, I think he might even be a better grappler than Brian Ortega at this point in their careers. has the momentum, has the power on his feet. His stand-up's getting a lot better. I'm just going to have to go with Diego Lopes. I don't think he finishes Brian Ortega. Maybe he can get like a submission in the later rounds. I can see him kind of rocking Brian Ortega. But you do kind of worry if it does go to the ground. Maybe Diego Lopes at some point tires out and maybe gets into some trouble in the grappling. But I don't see that happening. I think if anything, if Brian Ortega gets dropped or anything, I think he probably asks for him to get back up to the feet, because I think that's probably the safest place for Diego Lopes, at least to avoid the most danger against Brian Ortega, because I think Brian Ortega really just has us grappling. Like, you saw him against that year, he's getting beat up even before. In that first fight where he got the shoulder injury, he was getting beat up pretty badly. Volkanovski got beat up pretty badly. Max Holloway got beat up pretty bad. Like, he takes a lot of damage from some of these strikers, and Lopes does have the power to inflict that on Brian Ortega. So I'm going to go Diego Lopes here. Maybe he can get a finish in the second or third round, but Ortega is pretty durable. I see this being like 30-27, maybe even 30-26 against Brian Ortega here. So let's move on to the co-main and the main event. Up the card to the co-main event, we have Alexa Grasso versus Valentina Shevchenko 3. This is their third fight, third consecutive fight as well. And I picked Valentina the first fight. I picked Alexa the second fight, which arguably could have gone Valentina's way. And in this fight, I am going to pick Alexa Grasso. I think Valentina is just kind of a little too old now. I think by the time this third fight happened, she's 36 and a half years of age. Like, it's been a year since their last fight. And again, Valentina arguably should have won that. But the thing in those fights is Alexa Grasso was finding mistakes that Valentina was making and was capitalizing on them. And I do think, although Valentina is very good, very technical, I don't think it's her time anymore in the flyweight division. And I do think she might be a little bit too emotional in this fight. She took the last fight pretty seriously, and she probably didn't even want to take this fight from what we heard. She didn't want to fight on the Mexican Noche card because she felt like, especially last time that she got robbed, like I think the 10-8 round was pretty rough against Valentina there. I don't know if that's a 10-8 round at all, but she probably feels like there's going to be some biased judging. I'm surprised she did take this fight. And probably in the press conference, you'll hear her say, like, this is bullshit. Like, she shouldn't be taking this fight on this card. We'll see how this one goes. I think Alexa Grasso, like, normally when you see these trilogies or rematches, the second fight or the third fight's a little bit more dominant than the first couple. So, like you saw Holloway and Volkanovski. The first fight, I thought, was Volkanovski's. Second fight was extremely close. Third fight, Volkanovski kind of just destroyed Max. So I think we'll see a little bit more of a clearer performance for Alexa Grasso here. I think the next plan for Valentina Shevchenko should probably be moving up to bantamweight. Bantamweight needs something. Pena and what's her name? Whoever the champion is, I can't even remember who the champion is. This is how bad bantamweight is. There's just nobody. It's Kayla Harrison. Pennington's the champion. There you go. And Pena. Like, this is a very rough bantamweight division. So I think Valentina should move up, kind of bolster up that 135-pound division. I think 125 is kind of growing some prospects. Same thing with strawweight. So I think they're kind of fine naturally with how the prospects are moving. Keep it there. But I think Valentina should move up. They're not really that skilled at 135. So I think Valentina has the best chance at winning the belt at 135, especially at 36 years of age. So I'm going to go with Alexa Grasso. She did rock Shevchenko early on in that first fight, I think with like a jab or something. Like, Alexa Grasso does have some hands. She has good grappling. I think she can find a moment on Valentina and potentially get a finish. Maybe she can win this one by decision, but I do think I am going to just side with the younger fighter here, especially with the last two fights. I think this trilogy has gone on for way too long. Was this year and a half it's been? I think it kind of favors Alexa Grasso a little bit more here. I think Shevchenko is going to come in a little too emotional, and I think she's going to be a little bit hittable at certain points in here, and we're going to kind of see Shevchenko maybe slow down a little bit more, and Grasso maybe land some better punches than Shevchenko. Not better punches, but find the speed and timing on Shevchenko more than their previous fights. So I'm going to go with Alexa Grasso here. I'm going to say decision. I don't think she finishes Shevchenko. There's definitely that possibility where Grasso can take down Shevchenko, or Shevchenko tries to do a spinning attack and gets taken down again and gets her back hopped on again. But I'm going to go Grasso here. I think probably 49-46, maybe 48-47, but I think it's going to be a clear decision win for Alexa Grasso, where Shevchenko starts to move up to 135. So Let's move on to our main event. We have Sean O'Malley versus Merab. I'm going to go with Sean O'Malley. I don't think I can pick Merab in this fight, especially even if you say, like, after that Aljamain Sterling fight. There's more to this fight than just, oh, he beat another wrestler in his last fight. Realistically, comparing Merab Dvalishvili versus Aljamain Sterling, I think Sterling's more tricky on the feet. Maybe has more finishing potential. I don't know if that's necessarily true. I probably will just leave that one out. But he's better on the feet, especially with the range. Like, he's very tricky with his takedowns. I think he has better entries as well. He's very tricky. He keeps a weird range. He's very weird on the feet, so it is very tough to kind of catch someone like Aljo. Like, Aljo, again, doesn't have great defense or anything, but he throws a lot of kicks, keeps it at range. Merab, he rushes in there with his chin held up high and with just very bad technique, and it's just really wild. And I do think Sean O'Malley does have the ability to catch Merab. And what Merab has, he has really good cardio. He does have some decent wrestling, but he can never establish control like Aljamain does. Aljamain's more dangerous on the ground, in my opinion. Way better grappler. And the thing with Merab is that although he has the most takedowns in the UFC, the reason why he has the most takedowns is because they kept getting up from the takedowns. And this isn't Henry Cejudo where he can pick him up and kind of slam him down to the ground. Sean O'Malley is really good off his back foot and is really good at circling the cage and kind of staying out of danger, which is why I think he can find a shot against Merab. And Merab does have some really good recoverability, in my opinion, if that's a word. He can recover pretty well in these fights because I do think, I don't know if he's on EPO or if he's on any kind of steroid, but he obviously keeps his training and health up. So he does recover pretty quickly from some of the bigger shots that he does take. Like, he got rocked versus Henry Cejudo. Let's see, he got rocked by Marlon Moraes, almost got finished in that fight. So he does recover pretty well. So I do think Sean O'Malley will kind of just have to keep patient a little bit more here. And I just don't think there's going to be any danger for Sean O'Malley in this fight. Here's the thing, like, as much as Merab takes down Sean O'Malley can get back up. And I don't think Merab's going to be able to submit Sean O'Malley. Like, this is a 5-round fight. He's not a dominating wrestler where you can establish control on the ground, where you can kind of keep him in one place. I think Sean O'Malley can find his way up. He's going to be a very tricky guy to touch, to grab onto in this fight. And I do think Sean O'Malley can kind of find this shot like he did against Aljo. And even Aljo couldn't really take down Sean O'Malley. I think it was like early in the first round or early in the second round where like Sean O'Malley slipped, or it was like the end of the first round. And even Sterling couldn't get him down there. So I do think Sean O'Malley can find the shot. I think it's going to be multiple shots where he's going to need to find Merab and kind of put him out that way. He has taken a lot of damage and has recovered. Maybe we'll see Merab Shin kind of just finally go out cold and he'll stiffen out. But he's almost like 34 years of age. That's really old for a bantamweight. I think Sean O'Malley can find a shot here and really beat up Merab in this one. I think it's going to be more of he finds a shot, rocks Merab. He should be like, Merab, okay, let's get up. Merab will come in again, finds Merab again, and gets dropped again. And I think he should continue to do that, because I don't think you should be wasting your cardio or energy on trying to finish Merab, because you know Merab is going to recover pretty well. So I think he should be rocking him, maybe find a couple shots on the ground. If Merab is recovering pretty well, tell him to get up, find it again, and just keep doing that until Merab kind of just finally goes out till like the recoverability just isn't there anymore. Because I do think you got to worry about like not wasting too much energy trying to finish someone like Merab who's really good at recovering. So I'm going to go with Sean O'Malley in this fight by TKO. I'm going to say late first round. I honestly think Merab's way too hittable in this fight. His only offense is closing the distance, and maybe Merab can do something like super crazy and just throw something super wild and catch Sean O'Malley on the chin and put him out. But I don't think that's possible here. Sean O'Malley's almost 30, so he's in the prime of his bantamweight career, and these younger guys look pretty good. Like 30 years of age is kind of like the sweet spot for a bantamweight. I think once you get over like 32, I think is where you kind of start to fall off at bantamweight. It's just my opinion, but once you hit your 30s at bantamweight, the speed starts to go. So I think Sean O'Malley is going to piece up Merab pretty badly in this fight, and I do think he eventually wins by TKO in the late first round. That's my pick here. Let me know who you guys have down below in the comments, and I'll see you guys next time.